Mr. Samuel, his back bent with age and work, pushed his rickety cart down the cracked streets of the city. His cart wasn't much, just a few worn-out vegetables, some fruits that had seen better days, and a few bottles of water, but it was all he had to make a living. Every day he would wake before dawn, sweep the sidewalks and wheel his cart to the market, hoping someone would spare a coin for his meager goods. Life hadn't been kind to him. His wife had passed years ago, leaving him alone with memories and the echoing silence of an empty house. He had no children of his own, no family to care for him. Yet somehow he carried on with quiet dignity. One day, as he sat up near the corner of the market, he noticed them, 3 young children huddled together against the cold, their tattered clothes offering little protection from the winter chill. Their faces were pale, their lips blue from the cold, and yet their eyes held a spark that refused to dim. Mr. Samuel recognized the hunger in their eyes. Immediately, the same hunger that gnawed at him in his own lonely moments. Without a second thought, he reached into his bag and pulled out the last of his warm bread, breaking it into 3 pieces and handing them to the trembling children. "Eat," he said softly, his voice rough yet kind. The children looked up at him, stunned, as though they had never seen kindness before. They devoured the bread as if it were the most exquisite meal in the world, and Samuel watched, a warmth filling his chest despite the freezing wind. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The children returned day after day, and Mr. Samuel shared what little he had. Sometimes it was leftover vegetables, sometimes warm soup he had bought with his own hard-earned coins. He never asked for anything in return. The city around them was cruel and indifferent, people hurrying past without so much as a glance. But Mr. Samuel never wavered. He didn't have wealth, but he had a heart vast enough to hold 3 starving souls, and that heart shone in every act of generosity. He named them the Triplets, though they weren't related by blood. They had simply become inseparable, bound together by fate and Samuel's kindness. The Triplets, named Leo, Mia, and Arya, were quick learners, street-smart in ways no child should have to be. Samuel taught them small lessons of life, how to recognize good people from those who would take advantage, how to earn a little money honestly, and how to never lose hope. He told them stories of better times, of dreams that could come true if one had courage. And though the children were young, they absorbed every word, storing it in their hearts like treasure. The city was harsh, but Samuel's little acts of love became their anchor. He was old, his hands calloused from decades of work, but he never let fatigue or hunger stop him from helping them. Each evening, he would sit with them, sharing stories, sometimes even singing softly to lull them to sleep, the winter wind whipping outside like a relentless enemy. People in the market began to notice the old man and the children. Some were touched, some ignored, but none understood the bond that had formed. It wasn't about charity, it was about love, about creating family in the most unlikely circumstances. Samuel didn't ask for recognition. He didn't want fame. All he wanted was to see them safe, warm, and happy. Yet life remained harsh. Money was scarce, illness was frequent, and the cold never seemed to relent. Still, Samuel endured. He had learned long ago that the world might not reward kindness immediately, but that didn't mean kindness was wasted. As the years passed, the triplets grew, and Samuel grew older, slower, weaker. But he never stopped teaching, never stopped loving. Every time he handed them a piece of bread, every time he shared a warm coat or a gentle word, he planted seeds in their hearts, seeds that would one day bloom into gratitude, determination, and a drive to repay the kindness that had saved their lives. Samuel's life was simple, humble, and often lonely, but he had purpose. And purpose, he knew, was worth more than any treasure in the world. Years passed, and the city changed around old Mr. Samuel. The streets grew wider, buildings taller, but the corner where he had once set up his humble cart remained the same. Samuel had grown even older now. His hair was white as snow, his back more bent, and his hands trembled with the wear of decades. Yet he still came each morning with his cart, offering vegetables and bread to anyone who might spare a coin. His heart had never stopped giving, even when his body demanded rest. Life had taught him patience, endurance, and faith in humanity, even when the world seemed cruel and indifferent. Then one chilly afternoon, as Samuel arranged a few carrots and a loaf of bread on his rickety cart, he heard the unmistakable roar of engines. At first he ignored it, thinking it was just another luxury car passing by. But the sound grew louder, insistent, and before he could comprehend it, 3 sleek, Shining Lamborghinis pulled up beside his humble cart. The glossy exteriors gleamed in the sunlight, the doors opening upward in dramatic fashion, and from each car stepped a young man and two young women, tall, confident, and radiating success. Samuel blinked in disbelief. Could it really be them? The triplets he had fed and nurtured all those years ago. Leo, the eldest, was the first to approach, his eyes glistening with emotion. "Samuel," he said, his voice steady but filled with reverence. "Do you remember us?" Samuel's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment he could barely speak. "Leo, Mia, Aria," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of years. The three of them, once hungry and cold, now stood before him with elegance, power, and success that most people could only dream of. Their eyes shone with gratitude, love, and a quiet pride. Pride that they had not forgotten the man who had saved them from despair. They didn't just bring greetings, they brought change. "Samuel," Arya said gently, placing her hand on his, "we never forgot your kindness. You believed in us when no one else did. You fed us, taught us, and loved us like family. Today we are here to give back." And with that, Leo handed him a small card. Samuel looked at it confused, and then realized it was not just a card, it was the key to a new life. They had built businesses, companies, and investments over the years, all while remembering the man who had once fed 3 starving children. And now they insisted that Samuel never had to worry about hunger, shelter, or survival again. The crowd that had gathered at the market watched in awe as Samuel's eyes filled with tears. People whispered, pointing at the Lamborghinis parked beside the rickety cart. "Is that—" Could it be? But Samuel was too overwhelmed to notice the whispers. He only saw the children he had saved all those years ago, now grown into remarkable human beings. Mia, with a gentle smile, knelt and hugged his knees. "We owe everything to you," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You believed in us when no one else would." Samuel's tears fell freely now, mixing with the dust in the cold air. His heart swelled with joy, pride, and a sense of fulfillment that he had never thought possible. Then Leo gestured to the cars. "Samuel, these are just tokens of what we've built, but they're meaningless if we don't share them with you. Today you ride with us, not on the streets, but as family, as the father who never gave up." Samuel shook his head, laughter and tears intertwining. He couldn't believe it. The man who had spent decades feeding strangers, living in poverty, was now about to sit in luxury beside the children whose lives he had saved. It was more than a reversal of fortune. It was a testament to the power of kindness, the undeniable truth that love and compassion always come back in ways no one can predict. As Samuel climbed into one of the Lamborghinis, the crowd erupted in whispers and cheers. Cameras flashed, people pulled out their phones, and strangers watched as the old man who had once been invisible, forgotten and poor, now sat in a car worth more than their entire lives, laughing and crying with joy. The market corner, once a place of struggle, had become a stage for a miracle born from simple acts of humanity. Samuel looked at the triplets, now towering figures of success and gratitude, and realized that every moment of hardship had been worth it. Every hungry child he fed, every sleepless night, every sacrifice he had made, it had all led to this moment. They drove together through the city, the wind rushing past them, Samuel's laughter echoing louder than the engines. People on the street stopped, stared, and whispered stories that would be told for years. The old man who fed the homeless triplets. They came back for him. It was more than wealth. It was a legacy of love, a living proof that generosity never goes unnoticed, that compassion shapes destinies, and that even the smallest acts can create miracles that ripple through time. By the end of the day, Samuel's life had transformed forever. He no longer worried about food, money, or shelter, but more importantly, he realized that the world was full of unexpected blessings, that kindness was never wasted, and that true wealth was measured not in money, but in the lives you touch and the hearts you change. And as the Lamborghinis drove off into the sunset, Samuel waved, tears streaming down his face, knowing that his life's quiet devotion had created a story that would inspire generations, a story proving that even the poorest heart can change the world when it chooses to give freely. And so, if you are watching this story, remember this: your small acts of kindness matter. You never know who you might change, whose life you might save, or what miracle might return to you years later. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories that restore your faith in humanity, and witness how love, generosity, and courage always find their way home.